My research was conducted using universally accepted methods of psychological research in the field. I created a comprehensive survey addressing the research question. This included the same 6 subcategories for our reading athlete as my literature review. My survey subsections included 3 to 6 questions targeting a specific subject area based on my previous research. The questions were rated on a 5-point Likert scale with numerical values from 1 to 5, as pictured on this example. A response box was also provided for listeners to gauge their interest in participating in a semi-structured interview. The semi-structured format included some predefined questions and themes, but also allowed for natural deep conversation to deviate somewhat from a specific point of inquiry. Similar to the method used by Brahms, Butler Point, and Coulter in 2020, 2018, and 2014 respectively. This mixed methods approach was based on the broader vision produced of these papers here, and enabled the complex perspectives of individuals to be fully considered in achieving a comprehensive understanding of the connections between mental health and performance. With all data selected, it was correlated both thematically by subcategory and generally by question. Raw responses were organized by question into a spreadsheet, and the formula 6 minus raw data plus X was applied to all question responses with a negative connotation, which I read, thus converting them to a consistent 5-point scale, measuring the net positive impact per participant. Responses were then loaded into a secondary spreadsheet that would aggregate to produce a cumulative score per participant, and that is shown in the bar right corner, or the second last column on the right. Questions 1 through 23 were renumbered and organized chronologically by number and category, and then this table shows some of the individual statistics per question, including their standard deviation, average response, and rank, which we'll talk about in a minute. Data indicated that respondents overall felt that their engagement with their equestrian community had a net positive impact on them. The greatest possible positive impact to our basic survey was 110 out of 110. And then 53% of participants questions were initially written to reflect the study's thematic and statistical outcomes, the quality of the data would have been significantly improved. Future research aimed to narrow the